name is Dada Maheshvarananda. I don't come from planet Jupiter. I'm actually a monk, and I'll tell you my story. I went to the college in Earlham College, Tunny College, in 1971. It was a time of the Vietnam War. So a lot of confusion. The more I read about the war, the more I think this isn't the way to solve problems. It was being done in my name. I became a conscientious objector. A month later, I burned my draft card, and I wrote a letter to the government saying I just broke the law and I'm not going to cooperate anymore. But by that time, 500,000 people were doing it, and they really didn't care about us anymore. I had this poster on my wall in college. It's Che Guevara saying, at the risk of sounding ridiculous, I would say the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. And I thought, that's what I want to be. I want to change the world as fast as possible, but I want to do it with love. I learned yoga and meditation shortly after that and found more happiness and more peace than I actually thought possible. So I went to India to meet the founder of this yoga path, who was a very interesting gentleman, Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, because my first meeting with him took place in his prison cell. He was a political prisoner for 7 years because of his stand against corruption, against the exploitation of women, and the exploitation of the caste system. Because of this, a conspiracy was made against him. He was put in prison for 7 years, and I found him to be an extremely humble man. And also, he seemed to have more unconditional love. He made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. And I thought, wow. So he inspired me to dedicate my life in the service of humanity. I became a monk. I wear orange, which means that my life is dedicated to humanity. He also founded this model, progressive utilization theory, or PROW, which is an alternative to both capitalism and to state communism, based on these things: economic self-reliance of every region, cooperatives, environmental balance, and universal spiritual values. So tonight I can share some of this with you. I've been working ever since for 35 years in Asia, in Latin America, a little bit in Europe, and for the last 7 years I'm working in Venezuela. But I always consider myself a revolutionary monk. Sarkar said there's 3 ways to respond to exploitation and injustice. And you can see this throughout history, for example, in the time of slavery. The first way is silence. A lot of people chose not to speak out of fear, out of worry, whatever. And many religious leaders also chose to keep silent, saying, that's out in the world. I'm a spiritual person. I'm not divorced from that. Another way, of course, is to work for reform. The only problem with reform is the possibility that by the time the laws are actually changed, everybody you want to help may be dead by then. So another way, of course, is, and Sarkar clearly said, he's a revolutionary, and to try to change the world as fast as possible. I wrote this book called After Capitalism. It's there at the counter. It's because I think capitalism will end, and one of the reasons, of course, is the idiocy of things like hunger. There's more food on the planet, according to the United Nations. You can feed everybody with no problem. Today, at this moment, there's enough food. Why is there hunger? Because it's not a priority. Yet contradictions are just incredible. Just in the United States, every week, 842,000 people are homeless. One calculation estimate. Obviously, people change every week. Somebody gets a job and moves out. Somebody loses a job, moves into their car. There's 22 empty houses for every one of those homeless people. I mean, there are these incredible contradictions. The movie they're watching is called The Economy. And the people coming out on the left are really happy because it was a great movie. They loved it. And the people coming on the right are very unhappy. The economy works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. You guys know this already. This is the wealth inequality in the United States. The bottom 20%. So this is what people think would be ideal to kind of divide the wealth like this. What Americans think the distribution of wealth is, they think it's a little unequal. But what it's really like, you can't even see the bottom 2 percentages because they disappear. People are in so much debt. There's so much wealth inequality. It's absurd. You all know the name Frank Luntz, I think? Do you all know the name George Orwell?
Yes.
Well, I think he learned from George Orwell, because he says, you know, you should never use the word fracking. You should use the word energy export. Doesn't that sound better than fracking, right? You know, so he told conservatives never ever use the word fracking, and don't talk about healthcare reform, talk about government takeover. Doesn't that sound bad? You know, government spending, you call it waste. The capitalist, he says, never use the word capitalism anymore. No, bad word. Don't use this, call it job creator. That sounds positive, right? He says CEO always call it pay for performance, their bonuses. That sounds wonderful. Even the company's crashing, everybody's losing their jobs. No problem, call it pay for performance. And last, of course, global capitalism, call it economic freedom. Freedom is a very positive word. We want to be free. Economic freedom doesn't mean you're free. No, it means you have the right, God-given right, to accumulate wealth without any limits whatsoever. You can steal the wealth from the whole world, the whole planet. You can leave people in poverty and hunger. That's freedom, economic freedom, according to Frank Luntz and the conservatives. I interviewed Noam Chomsky for my book, The Occupy Film Crew from New York. At that time, came up, and we filmed, and he said, you cannot have meaningful political democracy without functioning economic democracy, an economy of the people, by the people, for the people. The first principle of economic democracy is the right to live. The 5 minimum necessities of life, food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, should be guaranteed to everybody. You know what they say, that if we had to pay to give this to everybody in the world who doesn't have it today, it would cost a tremendous amount of money, almost 15% of the annual budget for military and arms in the world every year. You know, that's how much it would cost to actually provide this. But instead of providing it, actually, the best thing is to give jobs to people. Honest jobs, fair wages, living wages, right? And give it to, there's so much work that needs doing in this country alone, for example. There's so many, why can't we put the two together? There are 3 ways to own a business, right? There's private ownership, there's public ownership, state-owned government, and there's also cooperatives. It's interesting that both capitalism and the communist governments have tended to be very dogmatic about this. Capitalism saying as far as possible everything should be privatized, and communist governments traditionally have said as far as possible everything should be state-owned. And actually all 3 work very well in different situations. So for example, on the small scale, private enterprise works great, and with microfinancing, micro-lending, we can help individuals, the creativity of people, and cooperatives when enterprises get bigger. When you have 10 employees, for example, you have to decide whether you're going to transition to become a cooperative. And the third way to run a business, of course, state-owned, as a public utility like the State Bank of North Dakota, which is the only state-owned bank in the country. It's doing great. You know, instead of the profits going to investor pockets, the profits are recirculated as new loans for the economy, for the people of the state. Local economies, you know, this is a graph that just shows in general, because every enterprise is different. When you shop in a local store, on average 73 cents of your dollar stays in the community. When you shop at the big box stores, McDonald's, whatever, most of your money goes to investors, goes to China, goes to other places. This is average, right? Every enterprise is slightly different. But obviously the goal is local economies. There are also different ways to govern a society, and I'm going to mention 4 of them briefly, okay? The first one, which is used by native peoples throughout the Americas, Africa, Asia, Australia, was generally a council of respected elders. The idea that the elderly people in the tribe, they had more experience, and hopefully together they would make wiser decisions for the future of the community. Another way, which was done for 5,000 years in China, was the idea of the wise leader, usually a Taoist sage, and that king would try to make a benevolent rule for everyone. Always, eventually, a tyrant took over, and then the search was on to find a new leader who could unite the people, recapture power, and again make a benevolent rule. The third way we know very well, political democracy. It comes from Europe, right? Basically, the idea is, what is the religious traditions of Europe? And the United States is a few hundred years ago. It's always been Christian, right? What does Christianity say about the fundamental nature of the human being? Anyone?
Sinner.
What?
Sinner.
Sinner, right. We're all sinners, right? So who are your elected representatives going to be? Any guess?
Sinners.
Obviously. So what is the goal with political democracy? The goal is checks and balances, right? Because if you're, the idea that absolute power corrupts, right? I'm sorry. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely comes from Europe, this idea. So the idea you're always going to have rather mediocre leaders. And so the danger is, you know, we should be protected by always having the checks and balances, right? Now the fourth way, of course, that we know today is participatory democracy, where everybody's face to face and they make decisions affecting their community face to face. Can you give me examples of participatory democracy?
The wooden shoe.
The wooden shoe. Excellent. Another one?
Referendums.
Referendums, right. Yes. Not always. If it's a whole state referendum, it's not face-to-face. So the people have a choice, the people can have a direct say. It's not exactly participatory democracy, but it's a form, yes. Anyone else?
How about town meetings?
Town hall meetings, definitely, in New England, absolutely. Occupy movement, right? The local councils, right? General assemblies, general assemblies. Brazil, they have the, and I'll talk about Latin America in a second. So all of these can work, and all of these can fail, right? So the point is choosing, you know, and trying to combine the best aspects of these. You know, if political democracy, of course, get the big money out of it, right? So, anyway, economic democracy in Latin America. President Chavez came to power in Venezuela. He was elected 14 years ago. And he, for the first time, tried to use petroleum money the country was generating for the people, to provide the minimum necessities of life to everyone. So this logo, which I really like, Venezuela, for the first time, is for everyone. Okay? So food, for example. Free lunch program. Every kid in public school gets a free lunch and usually a breakfast and a snack as well. Subsidized food. Housing. He built 200 houses last year for the homeless, and the plan is 2 million. They're trying to build 400,000 this year. One day I got sick, dizzy, I'm vomiting, I don't know what it is. It turned out it was bad yogurt I'd eaten. But they took me to a clinic. I started feeling better. They said, just to be safe, come in tomorrow morning and get a free MRI. Just to be safe, you know. I like that. I don't know how much a free MRI, they have them here, you know, but I like getting a free MRI there. So they opened clinics in every village. They brought in Cuban doctors as a trade for petroleum, who speak Spanish fluently, who of course are very well trained according to the World Health Organization. So it's a really nice trade-off. He brought poverty down, Chavez, in 14 years by 50% and extreme poverty by 70%. And not only that, the economy is growing at an average of 4.3% a year in over 10-year period. That's a very high growth rate. He's also empowering communities. There's now 66,000 functioning cooperatives in Venezuela. This is a documentary that our institute made of cooperatives in a poor region of Venezuela. Another life is possible, because we kept encountering women who said this was the first time they had their own salary, men who said the first time they had their own boss, and really so many different fields. There's agriculture cooperatives, hotel, restaurant cooperatives, We had sewing cooperatives, of course. These were all people that were pretty unskilled, right? But forming taxi drivers, bus driver cooperatives, pretty widespread. And community empowerment is very important too, because every community every neighborhood of 400 families or less would form a communal council. There are 33,000 of them now. And these communal councils would meet together. At least half have to be present when they make their decisions for them to be valid. Half the 400 families have to be present. And they would decide what are the biggest problems their community is facing. Septic tank, this road, whatever they need. And then they would make project proposals up to like $20,000. The first two priority that they all agree on. And the government has $1 billion that they would divide and they would hand over to each community to do their project proposals. And basically every project proposal is approved. I live in a neighborhood with anti-Chavistas. You know, it's big houses actually, and so most of the people in my neighborhood, communal council, but they have a communal council too. They get money too, and they decide themselves, ourselves, what we want to build, what we want to do with our money. So this is not central government telling them what to do. This is, to me, a powerful process of community empowerment. When Chavez died, this was the most popular T-shirt on the streets. We are Chavez. I am Yo Soy Chavez. And it's powerful, and mostly women. I mean, the women empowerment is very significant in the communal councils and in every aspect of this process. It's giving, I mean, I met women in Vargas, for example, in the hills of Vargas. They said, we were so poor before that it used to, when somebody got sick, they died. We had no health care. It took us 2 days to carry the body down to the cemetery, and sometimes when we got back, there was another body waiting to go. That's how bad it was. Now we have a clinic in every village. That doesn't happen. And more than that, the Women's Bank, Ban Mujer, by Nora Castañedas, they gave us a loan to make cooperative farming in these fields all around. And now we have enough income, we can take the food that we produce to the markets, we can sell them. And we all have a good income. We are never going back. This is a food co-op that's been running a long time, about 48 years now, way pre-Chavez. It's in Barquisimeto, Venezuela. The amounts that they're selling is impressive, you know. 55,000 families are shopping there every week. That's a third of the population of the city. It's big. 30% lower than the supermarket prices. They're selling $100 million annual sales per year. That's a lot of food. I mean, I saw the Roanoke, Virginia cooperative. It's great, been running 10 years. They're getting close to $5 million annual sales. $100 million. 1,200 employees, you know, workers for the cooperative. It's impressive. So, a hospital, a cooperative hospital, they have a cooperative funeral service, because poor families get really hit when somebody dies, you know. They want to honor grandfather, grandmother, whoever, but, you know, they go badly into debt. So, by paying $1.50 a month, 30,000 people, and you and 8 of your immediate family members are all covered. Anybody dies, you don't pay a penny. And full funeral service. The workers are very, very sincere, you know. They're not working on profit. They're getting paid a regular salary. They give very good service. Cremation, burial, coffins, everything works. A very nice service. And it's all free if you're paying $1.50 a month. So it's very significant. And they're starting up so many new cooperatives to provide everything. Schultz, shampoos, you know, cottage industries. The women in their houses are doing this. The takeovers you know about, I think, in Argentina, when the economy crashed because of the IMF structural adjustment policies, workers started taking over their factories. So 250 factories and enterprises, hotels have been taken over by the workers, and only 2 have failed. That's a pretty good success rate. 174 worker-owned takeovers in Brazil, part of the solidarity economy of Brazil. This is a painting from the Philippines where I spent 8 years, and I always like it because I think it captures the cooperative spirit. It's called Bayanihan. Whenever the water would rise, they would literally pick up a house and move it to higher ground. It doesn't happen too often anymore, but every child in the country knows that word. It means we all move together. Bayanihan. Leadership is very important too in economic democracy. Moral leadership. And I want to be very clear what I mean here. Anyone can become an ideal leader by setting a personal example. Gilberto Menchu, indigenous woman from Guatemala, of course, won the Nobel Peace Prize. This woman I know personally, Marina Silva, from Brazil. She was illiterate till the age of 11, a rubber tapper's daughter in the Amazon rainforest. She started working with Chico Mendes until he was killed. She went to school. She became a very powerful speaker. She became Minister of the Environment. She's running for president next year. She's really an incredible lady. And I've met in the landless people's movement, for example, in Brazil, so many people, they never went to school in their life. But when they talk, wow, unforgettable. Because they're walking their talk, right? They're not talking out of books or theories. They're talking from their life experiences. They're the most revolutionary speakers I've ever heard. I met Chavez 10 years ago when I gave him a copy of my book, my first book in Spanish, and he invited me to his television show. It wasn't a big deal. There's 150 guests that day, right? It's a weekly show. It goes on for 5 hours. But I gave him a copy of the book, and he liked it. And so when I got my 2 minutes, and we're actually conversing for 2 minutes on the show, he's saying, well, we like this very much. So you have a preface by Noam Chomsky. We like him. And you have, Frei Beto from Brazil. We like him. So yes, very good. And he said, brother, let's continue with spirituality, spirit, morality, good faith, and the mystical force that guides the world. I like that. I think there is a mystical force that guides the world. It's interesting, I don't know, on another occasion he was speaking with Christopher Higgins, a journalist, and he said, ask me your toughest question, Christopher. I said, okay, what's the difference between you and Fidel Castro? And Chavez said, that's a very interesting question. We're good friends. We both agree about the United States embargo and the wars in the Middle East. We don't like it. We're friends. But we disagree on 3 things. First of all, he's a communist. I'm not. They have a one-party system in Cuba. We have multi-party system, and we have elections. Chavez won 16 out of 17 elections during his 14 years. His party. Free and fair elections, according to Jimmy Carter of the Carter Commission, right, who said it's the freest and fairest elections in the Americas. He said the second difference, they believe in a state-owned economy in Cuba. We believe in a mixed economy. We have private ownership, we have cooperative ownership, and we have state ownership. Mixed economy. And the third difference, he says, Fidel's an atheist, I'm not. He ended by saying, brother, you are welcome, and all who believe in a better world, you're welcome to come to Venezuela. So I did. In 2006, actually, we registered in 2007. We started the Prout Research Institute of Venezuela. And this gentleman, my brother here, Brian, spent 6 months, something like that, with us in Venezuela. And we're independent. We're not for profit. I must admit, there are problems in Venezuela, in case you didn't know. There's serious problems. And one is crime, one is corruption, and the third one actually is the rhetoric. In my opinion, mutual, respectful, nonviolent communication is the goal. And Chavez always insulted the opposition, called them squadlets. Doesn't make sense in English. It doesn't make sense in Spanish either, actually. It's an adjective. What is a squalid? Nobody knows, but obviously it's a bad word. Everybody knows that. So, I mean, there's no dialogue. And I think respectful dialogue is necessary in order to attract more of the middle class into this revolution that he's doing. And the recent election, where there's only 1% difference between Maduro and Capriles, it's a sign. And many people, a significant number less voted this time than last time because they're not happy with things. I mean, it's an indication that they need to do more, and I really think the dialogue could be much better. Anyway, so we have this research institute. We usually have 10 volunteers, 5 Venezuelans, 5 from other countries all around the world. We've had 40 volunteers since we started. We have a big house. In addition to the 10 of us who usually live there, we have 40 guest beds. We have 7 bathrooms. It's a big house. We have the use of this house forever. It's a wonderful gift. So we have courses. We have courses in cooperatives and economic democracy. This is what I say every morning I wake up in paradise, because we have 8 mango trees and guava trees and papaya trees and lemon trees and guanabana trees and a lot of things. And if you come there, I mean, you're all invited. Of course, it's hard work during mango season. In the morning, you have to pick up 40 beautiful ripe mangoes that fell in the night, you know, and cut them up and make this juice, and again go out in the afternoon, pick up another 40. It's a lot of work if you go down there. Don't expect an easy time, okay? It's good work. We have yoga classes for those who like, yoga and meditation for personal development. 2 hours out of Caracas, we have this incredible women's center called Centro Madre. It's in a region that's 95% Afro-Venezuelan, okay, with, of course, a history of descendants of former slaves, discrimination, poverty, racism. And there's a word in Spanish, rescatar, to rescue the self-esteem of the people. And this is Dee Dee's goal, who works, the director. She wants to uplift, so she has all these workshops and cultural programs to uplift the women, the teenagers, the children. So to conclude, basically, Prout proposes that ecological and spiritual perspective is fundamental to making a better society. You know, the indigenous peoples of the world, they never said, the land belongs to me. They say, I belong to the land. You notice the difference? That perspective, I think, we desperately need today. I want to clarify what I don't mean. I'm not talking about fundamentalism, dogma, that's closed-minded, obedient, instilling fear. It divides people between believers and non-believers, you know, like we're going to heaven and you're all going to hell. Excuse me, I don't like that. I'm talking about open-minded spirituality, questioning, you know, what are the fundamental questions? Who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? Those kind of questions I really like. And seeing all people as one human family, basing it on love. So what does this mean? This means that we can't leave anybody behind. We can't make any kind of system where some people are discriminated, some people are excluded, some people are left out. Of course not. We have to make the world work for everyone. Because planet Earth wasn't given to anybody on a piece of paper. It belongs to humanity. It's a gift to everyone. We have to share it in a sustainable way, obviously. I'm a meditation teacher. These are the benefits of meditation. I don't know if any of you are interested in any of these benefits. If you're interested in any of these benefits, I think you should meditate. I think it's good for you. Can I ask a question? How many of you practice meditation, like, at least sometimes? Okay. How many of you practice meditation, like, every day? Yeah, okay, great. So there are many health-related benefits as well. You know, people who meditate have less heart disease, fewer tumors, 50% fewer hospitalizations, mental disorders, and people who, when they use meditation therapies, it helps for chronic pain, anxiety, depression. I mean, if you believe in science, you should have meditation in your workplace. It's good. I teach meditation in prisons. Always I get captive audiences. It's a joke, guys. Anyway, I teach in Brazil, in Portugal, in Venezuela also. How do you meditate, basically? 5 simple ways. You close your eyes. Almost every system of the world teaches this. Sit straight, not moving, breathing deeply, because when you breathe deeply, automatically your mind will slow down. Anytime, just try it. When you're so stressed out, you're so nervous, take a long, slow, deep breath and your mind will stop. Just for the moment. So deep breathing is a key. Mantra, of course, is a system from India. and practice every day. This is, you know, every system of meditation teaches that. I come from the yoga tradition of India, so meditation in the yoga tradition is always focused on love. The idea that you're feeling love inside you and you're feeling the warmest, most beautiful, loving, safe love all around you. The force that guides the stars guides you too. So, my conclusion, I think we need revolution, and I think we need it based on love. And my second conclusion is you should follow your bliss. I get bliss from meditation. Whatever your passion is, you should follow it. You should do what you want to do. And those are my conclusions. What I think has happened in Venezuela is actually a class change. Chavez was a person of color, of course. He was part European, part Native American, and part Afro-American, Afro-Venezuelan, whatever. So, I mean, mixed, as many people in Venezuela are. But when he came to power, I mean, the biggest shift is he changed everybody, all the ministers. He didn't put the list of recommendations that the big guys gave him. He threw it in the trash, and he appointed people of color in every ministry. So suddenly you get the wealthiest people are not in power anymore. They're not in control. They still have their wealth, but they're always in danger because the revolutionaries have taken over the government. Having said that, they're doing everything they can, of course, to pay for a coup, and then to pay for the strike, and then the oil strike, and then the elections, and they're desperate to try to get the power back. But, you know, one of the beautiful things is that poverty got on the national agenda. You know, so in this election, both candidates are saying, we're not going to stop the programs for the poor. That would be political suicide if they said that. So in order to win, you know, some of the poor voters over to the other camp, they're saying, we're going to continue the same programs. We're just going to do it better, more efficiently. And crime and corruption are such big problems, you know, that's why a lot of people were kind of shifting sides or not voting last time. So having said that, I think that cooperatives are essential in social change. I think that capitalism, global capitalism, is not going to last forever. I think it's going to crash very, very soon. When, I don't know. But when it does crash, suddenly every example like this bookstore is going to become very important. Because suddenly people are going to be desperate for alternatives. In this country today, who wants alternatives? They're happy with what they have, most people. But, you know, the other thing I always remember, and excuse me, is that I put a pot of water to boil on the burner and I watch it and nothing happens. Nothing. And I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait and suddenly, poof, the whole thing transforms. And it can't transform without all that time when it seems like nothing's happening. What's happening in this society today? Nothing. The Occupy movement is dead, right? Nothing's happening, right? If you watch the media, I think it's a lie. I think tremendous consciousness, awareness is happening. I think so many alternatives are taking place, but you can't see them because they're not in the big news. And even the alternative news doesn't have a way to put all the examples together. So I think tremendous positive things are happening. Venezuela has a little more people, community, and government radio and television, so there's a little bit of news getting out there, but not a lot. So that's my take on it. And I think that this alternatives are very important. I think the system is going to crash very soon. And I think that we should make alternatives happen, and we should fight the system at the same time. But I don't feel a responsibility to bring it down. I think it's going to come down of its own accord. And more important, I think, is to know exactly what we want. And that's what my presentation is about. You know, what kind of world do we want?